It was a warm spring afternoon on the family's quiet countryside farm. The twin girls, Lily and Leah, both just 7 years old, were full of energy, giggling as they ran barefoot through the fields. It was one of their favorite games, hide and seek among the hay bales, trees, and tall grass near the barn. Their mother, Sarah, had always let them play freely on the land, knowing every inch of it and trusting the calm, open space to be safe. She stood on the porch folding laundry, occasionally glancing toward the field, smiling at the sound of their laughter echoing in the breeze. The girls took turns counting and hiding, darting behind the old tractor, slipping behind fence posts, and climbing carefully onto hay bales stacked beside the barn. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the farm. Sarah glanced at her watch and called out, "Girls, time to come in for supper." No response. She called again, a bit louder this time. Still nothing. She set down the basket and walked toward the field, expecting them to pop out and yell, "Boo!" as they often did. But the field was still. Her footsteps quickened. She called their names more urgently now, scanning the trees, peering behind the barn. No giggles. No movement. At first, she assumed they were just playing a trick, hiding extra well to stretch the game out. But as the minutes passed, unease crept in. Sarah's voice turned sharp with panic as she yelled louder, checking all their favorite spots. No sign of them. Not behind the woodpile. Not in the shed. Not even in the old chicken coop where they'd once hidden for nearly an hour. The farm, usually so peaceful and familiar, suddenly felt enormous and full of shadows. Her heart pounded as she ran toward the house to grab her phone. Something was wrong, very wrong. The twins had vanished. Within the hour, the once quiet farm transformed into the center of a growing emergency. Red and blue lights flashed across the gravel driveway as sheriff's deputies and local volunteers arrived. Sarah stood near the barn, trembling, holding onto a worn photo of the twins taken just weeks before. Officers moved quickly, coordinating with neighbors who had shown up in boots and work gloves, ready to help. Search dogs were brought in, their handlers guiding them through the fields, woods, and even nearby streams. The dogs barked and sniffed, but came back with nothing. As the sun dipped below the horizon, flashlights bobbed through the tall grass, beams cutting across fences and tree trunks. People called out the girls' names, their voices growing hoarse with repetition. The once hopeful atmosphere began to darken with worry. Everyone knew the land was vast, dotted with creeks, abandoned sheds, and dense patches of trees, more than enough places for 2 small children to become lost, or worse. Sarah clung to hope, replaying every moment from that day in her mind. Had she missed a sound? Overlooked something? She felt the weight of guilt pressing down as her husband, Mark, arrived from work, his face pale and eyes wide with fear. Together, they begged anyone who would listen to keep looking, keep shouting, keep believing that Lily and Leah were just hiding, just playing a game that had gone too far. Days turned into nights, and still no trace of the girls was found. The community set up a command center near the farmhouse, with a board full of maps, notes, and photos. Volunteers took shifts, checking areas over and over. Drones flew overhead. Posters of the twins appeared on telephone poles, gas stations, and online. Yet the fields gave no answers. As the first week slipped by, hope began to waver. Authorities considered every possibility. Could they have wandered into the woods and gotten lost? Was someone watching the farm? Each theory was more terrifying than the last. Sarah refused to give up, but her voice cracked with exhaustion, her eyes hollow from nights without sleep. Her daughters had simply vanished without a trace. 2 long, painful months passed. The search teams had long since packed up, the police presence had faded, and the flood of volunteers had trickled down to just a few loyal neighbors who checked in from time to time. The farm, once alive with laughter and the twins' constant chatter, now sat in heavy silence. Sarah barely slept, haunted by the absence, the not knowing. Every time the wind rustled the trees or a bird flew overhead, she looked up with a flicker of hope that quickly faded back into grief. Most of the world had moved on, but she couldn't. Not with her daughters still missing. One quiet morning, Sarah stepped into the barn alone. The summer heat had returned, and she decided to start cleaning up some of the hay bales stacked in the back corner, ones they hadn't touched since the girls disappeared. With slow, heavy movements, she began dragging loose hay aside, stacking what she could to one side. Dust filled the air, catching the light as it filtered through the slats in the old wooden walls. She paused for a moment, wiping sweat and tears from her face. Then, as she reached for one of the older, larger bales tucked tightly against the wall, she noticed something odd. There was a faint, almost unnoticeable shift in the stack, like something had moved ever so slightly underneath. At first, she thought it was a small animal, maybe a raccoon or a snake seeking shade. Still, something in her gut told her to look closer. With trembling hands, she tugged at the hay, piece by piece, until the thick bale gave way, revealing a hollowed-out space behind it. The smell hit her first, musty, stale, like earth and sweat. Then came the sound. A faint, rasping breath. Her heart leapt into her throat. She crouched down and peered into the space, barely able to process what she was seeing. Two small, dirt-smudged faces stared back at her, eyes wide and blinking in the sudden light. Lily and Leah, her babies, alive. Sarah gasped, falling to her knees, tears pouring down her cheeks as she reached for them, her voice breaking as she sobbed their names. The twins didn't speak at first, just clung to her like they'd never let go again. Their clothes were ragged, and they looked thinner, but they were breathing. Somehow, they had survived. Somehow, they had been just feet away all along. Sarah's screams echoed through the barn as she cradled her daughters, her voice rising in disbelief and joy. Her trembling hands stroked their tangled hair, her eyes scanning their faces, their arms, their legs, making sure they were really there, real and alive. Leah buried her face into her mother's shoulder while Lily clung tightly to her waist. The girls were filthy, their skin pale and scratched, but they were warm. They were breathing. They were home. Mark came running seconds later, alerted by Sarah's cries. The moment he saw the twins in her arms, he collapsed beside them, wrapping his arms around his family, unable to hold back the sobs that racked his chest. It was the moment he had prayed for but dared not hope would ever come. Together, they wept on the barn floor, clutching each other like the world might disappear if they let go. Emergency services were called immediately. Within minutes, the quiet of the farm was replaced by sirens once again, this time bringing medics, not search parties. The paramedics gently examined the girls, offering water and blankets. They were malnourished, dehydrated, and weak, but miraculously, they were stable. As they were placed into the ambulance, the twins clung to their parents, afraid to be apart even for a moment. The responders promised they'd stay together, and Sarah rode with them to the hospital, never letting go of their hands. At the hospital, doctors confirmed what Sarah already felt in her heart. Against all odds, the girls were going to be okay. Slowly, they began to talk, revealing a story that sent chills through everyone who heard it. On that afternoon 2 months ago, while playing hide and seek, the girls had squeezed behind the hay bales, looking for the perfect hiding spot. One bale shifted and collapsed, pinning them inside a small, hollowed-out space. Hidden beneath layers of hay and old boards, their cries for help had been muffled. Days passed in darkness, and they had survived only by sipping water from condensation and eating crumbs they'd carried in their pockets from earlier that day. They had stayed quiet, thinking someone would find them. But no one had. And as time passed, they began to lose hope, until the moment Sarah uncovered their hiding place. The story made headlines. The twins' survival was called a miracle. But for Sarah and Mark, it was something deeper, proof that love, hope, and the smallest flicker of faith could lead to the unthinkable. The farm, once heavy with sorrow, was alive again. And the barn that had nearly become a tomb was now a symbol of a second chance.